So here it was. Within a week, my daughter basically was leaving. My son, who was fully involved, is still a ministerial servant, still in the congregation, was basically trying to figure out how he's going to leave, because I told him it's okay. It's okay to have your questions. It's okay to have your life and to live the way you feel you need.
Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to Ramacrow. As many of you know, I enjoy speaking to fellow ex-members of various cults. In particular, my main topic of interest is Jehovah's Witnesses for obvious reasons, and I enjoy speaking to fellow ex-witnesses when the opportunity presents itself. Today is such an opportunity. I'm delighted to welcome to the channel Matthew Williams, who is a former elder. Hello, Matthew.
Good morning. Or good evening, wherever you're at.
It's morning where I am. But it's really nice that you could reach out to us. As we were saying just a moment ago, before camera started rolling, you did leave a voicemail, and I felt on listening to your voicemail that it would be better to have a longer conversation about your experience. So how did you first come to be involved with Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, we were actually, as a family, we were Methodist before. When I was about the ages of 10 or 11, my family was contacted in the door-to-door ministry. Matter of fact, I still have memories of answering the door. Later on, those people I answered the door to would be ones I would be congregating with at a Kingdom Hall. But my mother accepted a Bible study, and we became witnesses. So at the age of 13, I was baptized along with my mother and father, my stepfather, that is, at the same time, all at the same convention in Kansas City, Missouri. And so it kind of started there. That's how we got started.
What year were you baptized?
That would have been 1990. Yeah.
Okay, so I was baptized December 1990.
Okay, yeah. It was I believe the Pure Language District Convention is what they called it.
Oh, mine was the Circuit Assembly. I was told, oh, Lloyd, you don't want to get baptized at the convention because you'll just get put in a bus and sent off to a swimming pool somewhere. It's better if you get baptized at the Circuit Assembly, and then you're in the pool with all your brothers and sisters watching. So that was the logic that was given to me as an 11-year-old. You were 2 years older than me, but I think you would probably say now that you were too young to be making quite the promise you were being asked to make.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I hadn't actually come to that conclusion. Had I thought about it honestly before, I probably would have pretty quickly. But I didn't realize just how heavy that was going to be till later in life, much later, when I realized the decisions I made then were going to drastically impact not just what I would or wouldn't do in life, but the friends I would and wouldn't have anymore going forward.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So you're 13, you get baptized. Presumably, you would have been already an unbaptized publisher by this point.
Correct.
And you then became obviously a publisher. And so how did your kind of rise through the organization proceed from that point? And were there any challenges you faced as a young person growing up as a Jehovah's Witness?
I kind of had we'll start by saying my mother was kind of the not the greatest part of her family. She's always had a lot of issues. And so my growing up as a child, even before being a witness, was somewhat sketchy, not normal necessarily. But becoming a witness, because I had in my life felt somewhat as like an outcast, I quickly became a part of something that I felt it was almost like a warm blanket. I put it on and I felt really good about it. As a matter of fact, I went after it with everything that I had. I was baptized at 13. I started regular pioneering when I was 15. I dropped out of school, not because I was told to by the congregation, but because my mom encouraged that. And I did. I dropped out of school, started working and pioneering, and I continued to do that. I was appointed as an elder when I was 19. I had a goal of going to Bethel, and I did that. When I was 19, I went to Bethel and served in Bethel from that would, let's see, it would have been 95 and 96 were the years that I was there.
Did you just say you were appointed as an elder at 19? Are you sure?
No, I'm sorry. If I said elder, I meant ministerial servant. Sorry.
I was thinking that's very unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So ministerial servant makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah.
That's all right.
So ministerial servant at 19. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, I mean, I was in full-time service from when I was 15 on. When I went to Bethel, because of my family circumstances, I ended up coming back after not being there super long. I'd been there just maybe a couple of years, close to a couple of years, and then came back. And when I came back, I was taking care of my mom, who, like I mentioned before, that's a whole nother story for another time, but she's a train wreck. And so just kind of had to be taking care of that. So I realized that I would be best used in the congregation. I wasn't going to be able to go out anywhere necessarily. I needed to be around home. So I just put my head in the work and kept going. I met my wife shortly after that, and then we were married. Ironic enough, I met her at the same building that I was baptized in years before. So I was in Kemper Arena in Kansas City. We had a string of conventions there over the years. Those were at the time district conventions. They ranged in the size of between 8,000 and 10,000 people. But we met there, and I knew that this was the person I was going to be spending my life with. So we got married the following year. And if I'm going too fast, or if you have any questions, just stop me. But we started having kids. We have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. Not long after getting married, we of course, my daughter was conceived, and so here she came. Matter of fact, she's actually left a voicemail on your show as well. Be about a year and a half, 2 years later, my son was conceived. He's also left a message on your show. But at that time, we were very involved. I was still a servant, but what's funny is, as a child, when we came into the quote unquote truth, I had a lot of questions. I've always been an inquisitive sort of person. And the kind of study that we had, basically, I was told that Jehovah will answer those in time. Don't get too fixated on it. Just worry about, doing what the Live Forever book shows us here. And then, of course, you probably remember the United in Worship book that you studied in as you're getting baptized directly after that. So that's what I did. But in my mid-20s, it really started weighing on me. I've got 2 kids, and I these questions came back around. I kind of had an epiphany at that time without not a lot of thinking. I realized that this seemed fake. It just seemed like a fictional story, and I thought that the people involved were right-hearted. They meant the best, but none of this is probably real. So I throttled off completely. I went from being a 12, 13 hour a month publisher and a ministerial servant to I lost my qualifications as being a servant, got very wrapped up in my job. I worked a lot of hours, and I spent maybe an hour or 2 in the ministry a month. I just eked by. And I was approached leaving the meeting early one night. My wife was home with the kids. They weren't feeling well. And there was an elder that stopped me in the foyer of the Kingdom Hall, and he just asked me, and he meant the best. He really did. At the time, I know him. He just said, "Where are you going?" I just said, "Well, I'm going home to help my wife take care of the kids. It's been a long day at work, and I got half the meeting, but I'm going to go home and help out there." And he said, "Okay," and he just kind of gave me a little bit of a hug, sort of, kind of a half hug, and just, like, take care of yourself. And I walked out, and I can't explain it, but when I walked out the door, I just felt like the worst person on earth. I could not believe. I became incredibly disappointed in myself. As I was leaving, I thought, just a couple of years ago, this would have been me in the lobby catching somebody leaving early, trying to give them words of encouragement. And I went home, and after stewing over that for a while, I just thought, this may not be the truth, but I think the people mean the best. And what is truth, really? I mean, do we really even know what the future really holds? Just so many questions that I had. I can't explain it, but I reinvested myself in it. I went after it again. I was met with by an elder in the congregation that had told me, he said, "Matt," he said, "you have all the tools to be an elder. You have all the ability. You can give talks. You're amicable with the friends. They like you. You're conversational. You could do this. You just need to apply yourself." So that's what I did. I went after it again, and I think it was around 2008. Well, it would have been before that. It would have been 2006, somewhere in there. I requalified to be a servant. And within 2 years of that, I was appointed as an elder. So around 2008, I became an elder. And I stayed an elder all the way up until 2021, October of 2021.
That's quite a long period. Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, I had intended that this is what I would be the rest of my life. I would be the old congregation elder somewhere that just kind of retired into being there to help young ones and any of the friends that had questions or needed help, and I would be there. But
if I could kind of, before we proceed further, if I could kind of drag you back, you mentioned that you went to Bethel for 2 years, around about the age of 19 or so.
Yes. Yeah.
So which facility did you serve at, and how would you sum up those 2 years at Bethel?
I served at Brooklyn Bethel. I worked in 360 Furman building on the 9th floor in the cabinet shop. I've always been a blue collar person. Pretty quickly after coming home, I got into technical work, and I do that. But early on, when I was a teenager, I did a lot of landscaping and woodworking and things like that. So I was used in the cabinet shop. And my experience of Bethel, the first week or two especially, was pretty incredible. At the time, the governing body was not near as visible. I did know who some of them were, but they're not near like they are today. So I guess in my mind at that time, they were almost more mythical. They were almost like rock stars. So when I went there, the first meal that I had, I was sat down at a table for lunch, and Brother Sidlick was actually the table head at that table, and I could not believe it. I was over the moon. I was like, this is my first meal here, and I'm already having lunch with one of the governing body, and that's Brother Sidlick of all people. I mean, I was blown away. The sense of order and being clean and neat, and they're somewhat fastidious at Bethel when it comes to all those things. And I took to that. I enjoyed it. And I think it was somewhat put together with the big city environment, which they caution you against. New York City here in the U.S. is the biggest city in the U.S., so it's just a whole nother world when you live there. And I was from small town Arkansas, where you could hear the banjo playing next door to the biggest city in the U.S. And eating lunch with people that I thought were incredible. So it was the first experiences were incredible. It did occur to me over time that this is just an assignment. It's somewhat mundane, and it can be taxing and exhausting. The daily habits of a Bethelite at that time, I'm sure they're different now, but they're still probably pretty strenuous, kind of ridiculous in some ways, I think, when I look back on it. When you go have lunch, you can't just go to lunch in whatever clothes you're wearing. You have to go shower and change and put on a suit and to go back out and have a lunch, only to go back and put your work clothes back on and work again for another 4 hours. Just a lot of things like that seem kind of trivial and silly. The not being able to wear shorts, couldn't rollerblade anywhere outside of the buildings there. You had to leave Bethel proper if you wanted to rollerblade or wear shorts.
See, that would be a deal breaker for me if they didn't let me bust out my rollerblades on at least a daily basis. I'd be out of there.
I was when I was a teenager. Of course, now I'm just a middle-aged fat man. But when I was a teenager, I was quite athletic. Used to ride my bike actually constantly, and so that was actually a sacrifice. I didn't have anywhere to put a bike up there. I couldn't take one, so I left that at home, and I took up rollerblading while I was there. But it was once again inconvenient. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to put them in a duffel bag and walk out a mile away from the campus and then put them on and go ride, which just seemed kind of silly. But those were things that, while they seemed silly, they were overshadowed with the uniqueness of what I thought was unique and being able to serve at Bethel. When I went, not everybody was getting accepted to go. And it was in my mind a big privilege to be able to be selected to go. And so I took it seriously. When I left, I really had intentions of staying there. But it became a necessity for me to come back for my mother. She was just unable to take care of herself and her circumstances. And I have 2 siblings, but they're 10 years younger than me. So it's really on me to take care of matters at home. So it was time to leave. When you approached your overseer, presumably they were understanding about your circumstances. Yeah, they were. And I was met with there whenever I was there. And I was told that the door was open. That's the phrase they used. And I had always heard that if they say the door is open, it means when you go home, if circumstances change, put in a quick letter and you could probably come back pretty quick. So that was all nice. And I felt bad leaving at the time. Like I said, when I left, I was very invested in it still. So when I came back, I was in the congregation. I was the local Bethelite, that came back home. And so there was, I guess you could say, maybe a level of respect for me or something like that. Like I had done something special, even though in the end, really what I had done is just pioneered for 4 or 5 years and had a special assignment in New York and came back. And there was not really anything extra special that I did other than build cabinets for a branch while I was there and take care of whatever I was told to do. So it wasn't, it didn't require rocket science. There was nothing about the task that was, I've done things later in life that required a lot more out of me, I guess is.
But what you described is kind of a treadmill, and this is kind of a recurring theme whenever I speak to people who've served in Bethel, that there are all of these rules, and they very often don't make sense, and the whole thing of having to change your clothes just to go and have lunch. I mean, I did ministerial training school for 2 months, and they had something similar there where after lunch, we would have work assignments where we would do menial tasks that had just been dreamt up just for the sake of us doing menial tasks. So we'd have to go to some changing rooms. I think it was the baptism changing rooms that we went to at the assembly hall, and we change into our work gear and then do, I don't know, an hour of shoveling bark in the car park. That we had this mountain of bark that needed to be put in the flower beds. And that took us ages. But after an hour, we'd come back to the changing rooms and we'd have to put our suit back on again and then head to our classroom. So thinking back, it was all very silly. And I remember thinking on one of my last meetings that I ever attended, just kind of glancing around the Kingdom Hall and seeing everyone in their suits and in their best dress. I remember thinking, this is all very deliberate, isn't it? Making people dress like this, because if people are dressed importantly, it immediately lends the occasion more significance and more importance than if people were just dressed in their jeans and t-shirts.
Yeah.
So psychologically, there's an intentional, there's a utility to making people dress in their finest. In this case, just so they can sit down and eat a meal, because it makes them feel like they're somewhere special.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny when you look back, the things that become clear to you that were not clear at the time, because at the moment you're deluded in the specialness, quote unquote, of the occasion. But that was my overall experience of it. And coming back, like I said, I continued on as a servant for a while. I got married, had kids, continued on. And I might have actually at that point been getting close to being appointed as an elder in the congregation, but that's about the moment where I throttled off. I just realized these questions that I had were not answered, and this just overall, it just seemed not real. So I wanted to just stay in it for my friends, and I somewhat liked the life, and I just wanted to have my family and have peace.
So fast forward to 2021 October. It might just be a coincidence, but we're talking about kind of a date that is very recent, but also sort of almost at the height of the pandemic.
Yes.
So if I may ask, what were your reasons for standing down as an elder? And do you feel like COVID might have had any role to play in how things panned out?
I think that it was something in me that was always there, that this need to question, that I had put things on the back burner. I decided not to look at them, just pay attention with day-to-day life and the tasks at hand. And in 2021, you're right. We're in the throes of COVID-19, and all the meetings are now on Zoom. Matter of fact, when I logged in to meet you this morning, it was almost post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's like, wow, I'm joining a Zoom meeting.
Triggering. Just to go on a Zoom call.
Yeah. But so I was, in our congregation, I was the watchtower overseer. So I did all the watchtowers over Zoom. And it was, I don't know, it really sucked a lot of the life out of it for me. And it allowed me to think more clearly. And I had come to the conclusion again that this is all fake. This isn't real. The thing that really got me the most was, and this had happened numerous times in my life, was hearing other elders talk about the validity of Noah's Ark, and the fact that most of the elders I'd ever come across would be kind of like, well, it might not have been. We don't know everything. Jehovah might have done something special. It's obvious they're having a hard time putting this together. And in my mind, it was just ridiculous. You would need another ark just to feed the elephants. I mean, there's just all the things you would need. It couldn't happen.
A fleet of arks, indeed,
yes.
for the amount of animals we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there were other things that just stood out to me. You watch, nature shows, and there are some animals that are built to kill. That's what they do. They are finely tuned. I mean, they're killing machines. And but we hold tightly to this belief that, oh yeah, we will pet cobras, we will play with lions, we're gonna hang out at the pond and tickle the crocodiles when they come up to look at us. The unwillingness of the branch to even throttle off on any of that, to even say, listen, this may be somewhat allegorical. Maybe it's not going to be that way. I think I could stomach it more if I was told that, yes, these things, this is different. God made these things to kill, that this is what they do. And we don't understand that. We just don't understand. But we think that we're going to be able to live forever. And here's why. I could have taken that kind of honesty. I guess in the end, it's probably the same with everybody. If somebody just tells me that they don't know, that's fine. I have all the room in the world for that. But if somebody's gonna continue to cling to something that is clearly wrong, and they know it's wrong, you can't look at it and not know that it's wrong just for a moment. Then I start to lose respect quickly. And this was just eating me alive. Along with the fact that in the congregation I was in, I was in somewhat of a power struggle with another elder, that it became clear to me that I have never felt any kind of a spirit come over me in an elders meeting. And this struggle that I'm having with this person who's clearly an arrogant, pig-headed person that doesn't have an ounce of kindness in his heart for other people, that seems to take pleasure in ruining their chances of spiritual advancement. And the fact that he was my brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
It just really added to the fact that, you know what, I'm over this. I'm done. Even if there was any of me that felt a desire to go along with it just to be with my family, I can't do this anymore. I just, as a person, I'm being eaten alive. So in October of 2021, I was already done in my mind. I didn't even know the term PMO. I hadn't even seen your videos yet, but in my mind, I'd already arrived at the conclusion, this is all hogwash. I'm done. I'm checking out. So I thought, what I'm going to do is, I had never even heard the term fade away, but that was kind of the design of my path. I'm going to step down as an elder. I'm going to check out. I'm going to attend a few meetings, and I'm just going to fade off, and I'm done with this. I'm over it. I have to rewind if I can.
Yeah,
Part
please
of what
do.
Yeah. Eating me up was an elder school that I went to, and I believe it was 2014 or 15. I've got the picture in the hallway still. Of the 5 days of the class, 2 of those solid were talking about child sexual abuse, and the way that the congregation is to handle it, the way the brothers are to handle it. I mean, 2 of the 5 days solid. And that to me seemed almost like paranoia. They talked about some cases, I believe they were in California, in which we lost millions. And I was appalled when I heard that. To myself, I thought, okay, if these are dedicated funds, why would Jehovah allow that to be lost? Why? And then if he did allow that to be lost, wouldn't that set the track record for how we should be from here on? That we're not going to be concerned with that, and we're just gonna say, listen, we have an issue. We're concerned about the victims. Let's help the victims. But there was no emphasis on that at all. The only thing that we talked about in the class is immediately calling the branch, calling the legal department, and the things you should and should not say.
And it's the whole policy of immediately calling the branch rather than the police that led to the organization having to pay millions in settlements and what have you to begin with. So so it's just doubling down on the problem.
So that was eating me up. We lived in a different part of the U.S. at that time. It was up in Missouri. Where I live now, this is actually where I had grown up, but we had relocated quickly after I had gotten married, and we lived up there for close to about 15, 20 years, close to that, up in Springfield, and we moved back from Springfield, Missouri, back down to Northwest Arkansas. So Cherie Porter she grew up in a congregation I was a part of. Her dad, her mom, all those people are people I know. So I come back. I'm an elder. I've been exposed to what's actually happening with child sexual abuse, which is weighing on me heavily. I'm having problems not feeling Jehovah's Spirit at all in elders meetings. I don't feel any kind of special connection. I'm doing things right. I'm sacrificing myself financially by living a simpler life at my job and doing everything I can to spend every spare moment for Jehovah, for serving the congregation. And there seems to be no blessings, no happiness. I'm not seeing anything. To me, it should be evident, but it's not. It's not evident. So we're back here, like I said, and I find myself in this just absolute clash with another elder and on the body, and it's becoming apparent to the point of it. You've probably heard the term being yielding and all that. There was never ever any yielding on his part. Just people that just would have the smallest problem he felt couldn't be used to handle microphones or hand out magazines or anything. It was just ridiculous.
I know exactly the type. I had my own clash with just such an elder, so I hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
And along with that, I had developed over the years a reputation of, I don't know if you'd call me a loudmouth or what, but just a person that won't shut up about what I think. If I think something, I'm going to say it. Now, if the group doesn't agree with that, then that's fine. I'm happy to go along with the group. That's the spirit of being yielding. I'm going to speak my mind, and then I might argue it a little bit, and then, okay, we're done. But what I found is that all these debates and arguments, as an elder, you probably knew that it all goes back to what's in writing. What they say is what is in writing, but it's not what's in writing in the Bible. It's what's in writing from the branch, from a letter that you can look up. And that was fundamentally wrong to me, because a lot of the arguments that I had came right out of the scriptures. But the arguments in return will be, well, this letter says. And I just... So
the letters take priority over the Bible. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And that's, once again, off-putting to me. Just another chip in the armor of it. It just was another thing that added to it. So when I made my decision to stop being an elder and step down, I did that. The body did not see that coming. I just turned a letter in to the Kobe of the congregation, and I didn't hear anything for a day and a half. So I thought, I'm going to give him a call and make sure he got my email. So I called him, and he said, yes, I did get your email. I'm just shocked. I'm sorry. I'm shocked, and I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Well, that's fine. Give me a call if you have any questions, but the letter pretty well says it. So I stepped down. I was asked, there was a couple of brothers that called me, please don't step down, stick with us. We need you to you're the person that's encouraging ones in a congregation to step up and to do more, but I just didn't have it in me anymore. I was done. In doing that, I started looking online, and I started running into your videos, and I started binge watching your videos. Incidentally, I travel a lot. I mean, and a lot of my time I spend driving in my truck all over the U.S., working for a very large company. I just take care of their computer systems and technical matters, and so I find myself. Matter of fact, after our visit, I'm going to be driving for 10 hours. So what I do is I queue up YouTube and find a Lloyd Evans video and would listen. And I'm not watching it because I'm driving. It's just running the audio through the system, and I'm just listening. And I was blown away that all the things that you had said were a lot of them were things I was already questioning. It was shocking to me. And what happened is now I have to go back again. My employer was a preferred vendor on the branch's website for audio video equipment. So the employer that I actually worked for, I was a lead technician for them, and they actually design and they design and sometimes install all the branch's equipment when it comes to Bethel, assembly halls, and all that. And so I would get sent out on special assignments to go to these places and commission AV systems for assembly halls. One of those I did was in Baltimore, Maryland, where I ran into, now that we're talking, he's one of the people that's on your show quite a bit. Him and his wife were just recently, I believe, disfellowship, but I know him. Well, man, why is his name not coming to me?
Was it Mark O'Donnell?
It is Mark O'Donnell. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just wasn't the best of friends with him, but I met him. And when we were there, and actually worked at his assembly hall for a while. So he may remember me, but when I was watching one of your videos, he was on there, and I was once again, I was like, holy cow, I know this guy. And so I'm listening. Matter of fact, that one was so, I can't remember which one it was, but it got me so much. I actually pulled over. I had to stop and just sit here and watch. And I believe he was talking about his story of what had happened to him, and he was on your show. I couldn't believe that had happened. I mean, I could not believe it. And so this radically changed me more, which was I can't just shut off the lights and walk out of the room. I'm going to blow this thing up. I'm going to blow it up. And not only am I going to blow it up, I'm going to be as loud as I can about it on the way out the door. And then I'm going to get involved in activism, which I have yet to really do. But so then came the stage 2 of my strategy, which was when I left, I want to remain a witness as long as I could, running my mouth about what's going on so that people would listen to me before I got disfellowshipped. And so that's what I did. It was October that I stepped down as an elder. A couple of months after that, I started posting things on Facebook about child sexual abuse cases that were happening all over the U.S. And I had at the time a fairly good group of followers that were witnesses that followed me. And so they're seeing these and they're asking me what is going on. And it didn't go real long, probably a month and a half. And I was called by one of the elders in the congregation, like, hey, can we get together with you? Sure. I knew what was coming. So we met and talked, and they said, what is up with these posts? I said, well, they're true. So I'm just telling the friends what they need to know. They have kids. They're not safe at the Kingdom Hall. It's important that they know that, I just feel it's important. And so they thought, well, you can have your feelings on that, but you need to kind of keep quiet about it, or we're going to have to take further action. So that meeting was
just
over.
To be clear, if you could just explain these posts. So
yeah,
I'm assuming it was kind of media posts,
correct,
from verified sources. And would you kind of like put your own commentary, like a little? Okay.
Yeah. So what I did is, rather than, because I knew if I took something from your channel and put it on there immediately, radar is going to be going off. And so what I did,
that's a fair cop, isn't it? Really?
Correct. Yeah. So I would actually look at news stations from the area and find reports when they reported on it. And I would take the video from that and post it on Facebook, and then make comments about, hey, look at what's going on. And that's when I stumbled across the one that had been completely quiet down here that nobody was talking about, which was in Heber Springs, Arkansas, which Mark O'Donnell talked quite a bit, you and him both on your channel. That absolutely blew me away. I did work in that town. So I posted that, and that seemed to be, every time I would post anything or make a comment critical, sometimes I would just make commentary on belief, without even anything about child sexual abuse. It could just be, how we treat disfellowship people. One of my posts was about that. And in the meantime, this story is pretty intertwined. I'm sorry. My kids, my son, as I'm withdrawing, my son is a ministerial servant, and he's already been to foreign language classes with the branch, and he went through a foreign language for Hindi. He was actually making plans to move to India to work over there. My daughter was married to a ministerial servant, and he's given talks and what have you. And here I am, I'm regressing. And it's a long story, but over the years, my kids, we've always had talks by just going on a drive. And they'll book an appointment with me. Hey, Dad, can we go on a drive? Yeah, we'll go on a drive. So we get in the truck and we go on a drive and we talk. And I had a very memorable drive with my daughter. And she was trying to tell me on that drive that she was done with the witnesses. And I told her where I was at that moment, and she was crying. It was an awesome feeling, but at the same time terrifying, because I hadn't talked to my wife yet really about where I was at. I hadn't talked to my son. I figured in all these things, my son was going to be the one I was going to have to put in a headlock and get in a real battle with. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna make an appointment now to talk with my son. And so I did that. And the day before we went on our drive, he had talked to my wife about he was having trouble inside. He said he was having feelings that he felt he was homosexual. And so I thought, wow, the timing of this is incredible. We went on the drive.
Jehovah's hand.
Yeah, we went on the drive the next night, and we just started talking. I didn't allude that I knew anything. We're just moving along and navigated the conversation a little bit. And finally, he just said, "Dad, I've got questions, and I always have." And I just said, "Max, you have a right to ask any question you ever want to ask. That's your right as a human being to answer your questions, to ask questions if you don't have answers. There's never a time that's wrong." And so he came out to me, told me all of what he felt. That drive was a 3-hour drive. So we came back home, and I had to talk to my wife then too about where I was. So here it was, within a week, my daughter basically was leaving my son, who was fully involved, still a ministerial servant, still in the congregation, was basically trying to figure out how he's going to leave, because I told him it's okay. It's okay to have your questions. It's okay to have your life and to live the way you feel you need.
And how just to, if you don't mind me asking,
no, that's fine.
What you've just described is very profound. It's profound, to listen to you describe your conversation with your daughter, and both of you coming into that conversation assuming the other to be a believer, and then kind of having this very emotional realization that you both feel the same way about your religion. But when you're having that conversation with your son, and he's not just expressing doubts, he's also coming out to you as gay, and he's finding in you love and acceptance and compassion. That must have been incredible for him to go, because he must have been expecting you to be dismissive of his sexuality.
I think he was. I think because my kids knew. I mean, I was an elder. I went to Bethel. I did all these things. I was a pioneer. I think they assumed that I'm always going to be a witness, and I would take a stand against them. And maybe it really shocked them. Maybe that's an interview for them to say how they felt, But with my son, it was complicated for me too, because at the time this is happening, I'm also seeing a complete change in who he, his everything, his sexuality, his outlook on life, where he's going to be living. In my mind, I'm assuming he's going to be in India within 6 months, and now that's not a reality. All these things are completely changing, and what I found was my wife, which, when I go to talk to her, which was the next thing I needed to do, my wife is, it's hard to explain, Lloyd, but she's one of the most giving people I've ever met. She's literally taking care of her parents, our whole marriage. Her dad, he died 8 years ago. She took care of him the last 10 years of his life. She takes care of her mom. Matter of fact, her mom currently lives with us. She takes care of all. My wife is a nurse, and she just doesn't work secularly. She just takes care of family. So for her, this is a major change. And it's one that I just think, as a person, psychologically, she just can't make yet, So she's still in the congregation. She's still a witness, and she does go to meetings on occasion. But she still socializes with her kids. And I don't just mean puts up with them. I mean, this is family. This is who we are. So we're always with our kids. My kids, good Lord, they raid my house every week for food and everything. They're always over here, which is great. That's how I've always wanted it to be. The only person that's left is my wife, and I'm still currently trying to slowly show her that. And I had left a voicemail on your show about that, because at the time I'm thinking one of the biggest concerns, I think, is giving up the fact that you're going to see your loved ones again. As a witness, this is a promise. And my wife really looks forward to that. She has her sister that passed away, her dad that died just a few years back. Her mom probably does not have a lot longer. This is her comfort. And so trying to help her step out of that, I don't know if I'll ever fully be able to do it. I don't know, but I know we're together. That was my
most important thing, I would suggest. Yeah.
That was actually the most important thing when I talked to her, is that, listen, these are questions. They're my questions. You can have questions too, and that's okay. And I'm not expecting you to to take what I believe and make it gospel for you. These are problems that I can't live with, but I love you as my wife, and I'm committed to you. I'm just not committed to this religion anymore. And the kids aren't either. But we love you, all of us, not just me, but the kids. We're all family. So we've jumped that hurdle. I'm hoping over time I'm seeing things that I hope are indicators that my wife is starting to see the reality of things to come. And I try to share things with her. She sees my Facebook posts. She sees all these things that I do say. And what's crazy is after sharing those Facebook posts, probably I quit keeping track of time of where things were, but it would have been probably just a few months, 3 or 4 months after stepping down as an elder, I got disfellowshipped. A lot of the friends in the congregation are still friends with me on Facebook, and they see these things that I post. So they're still looking, which is odd because I know a lot of them could be getting in trouble for that, but they're looking, and I'm not going to blow their cover. I'm going to let them see it. They need to see it. Yeah. And one of those people is my wife. My wife sees these things. She sees them, and she's been an outspoken critic.
Well, you just blown her cover.
Well, yeah,
wide open.
She does, but she does see these things, and so I think it's important for people to know. We can't go on living our lives with our head in the sand when there's children that are being abused like that. That is the most stomach turning thing. That and being disfellowshipped, I think, are the two worst things about this organization. As an elder, obviously, I had been a part of a lot of judicial committees and had seen things come and go.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. You were an elder for 15 years. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of judicial committees. I mean, I made it through 1 year of being an elder without being in a single one, but 15 years, you're going to be involved in judicial committees. You're going to be involved in disfellowshipping people. And dare I suggest, it wouldn't surprise me if you'd heard at least a whiff of child abuse over that kind of time span.
Yeah, certainly was aware of it. And other times, it will blow your mind. I never had a case that I personally had to deal with, but I know that, friends that had moved into congregations I was in, that was something that had been dealt with where they were at. And the dynamics that took place, which I'll keep quiet just for their own privacy. I'm shocked that they're still in the situation that they're in. It would have been, I would have, as a person, as a father or a mother, I would have had to cut that family up. Can't be in the same house anymore. You need to, it's shocking. It's shocking to me what people will quit worrying about in the name of protecting a name or the face of an organization. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's disturbing. So, and
how do you feel about the, the judicial committees that you were involved in? And,
it's funny about that. I made an effort as an elder always to, we were always counseled about trying to seek true repentance. And I wrestled with that a lot. But what's funny is on all the judicial committees that I had been on, it was only 1 or 2 that ended up in disfellowshipping. And actually those were pretty point blank. Those were people that had already made their mind up. Matter of fact, I reached out to one of them already and talked to him. I think it blew them away that I'm no longer an elder and I'm disfellowshipped.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And his was actually one of the quickest I'd ever been in. It was, and I was actually the chairman of that one. It was in 5 minutes.
Was there an aquarium involved at all? Sorry.
It basically was.
She seduced me with her aquarium.
Yeah. No, this was basically here's what I'm doing, and it's a life choice, and I'm going to continue to do it. So
right. Yeah.
Okay, well then we're done.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was pretty straightforward like that, and the other one wasn't quite as straightforward, but still a person that was, you could probably tell, was pretty well done with the witnesses.
Yeah.
On the contrary, that's the other thing that bugged me was it seemed like there were elders that had a reputation of, if they're on that judicial committee, it's going down. I mean, this person will not escape. If they did something just the slightest, if they drank 3 beers instead of 2 on a Tuesday, 6 hours before a meeting, it's over. They're I mean, just ridiculous. And it was that same sort of person that I had my tangle with in the congregation. Just a complete lack of empathy and care for people. And incidentally,
so it's good, I think, that you're able to look back on those 15 years and for whatever reason, it seems like you've managed to kind of dodge a few mines, and because obviously, even if you had been involved with disfellowshipping people who didn't want to be disfellowshipped, right. You were, your mind was not your own, and you were under cult control. But I think for elders who do make it out and who have been involved in kind of breaking apart families, it must weigh on their minds quite heavily. So I think for you and I to go through that experience, obviously I was only in it an elder for a year, but to make it through that without having that weighing on our minds is a good thing. Yeah.
It's it is funny, but I mean, actually hearing you say that, it does actually make me feel better, in the respect that I really didn't, other than a couple of times that were probably inevitable, break anybody up. Not to toot my own horn, but it always seemed like I was the elder that everybody wanted to go talk to if there's a problem, or if there's a problem in their family, they just wanted to go talk to somebody, or they needed to feel better about themselves, they would talk to me. I always tried to be very approachable, and it's been that way. I try to be that way in my family. I know my kids, I think my kids would tell a little bit of a different story. I think they thought of me as the boss in the house, And,
we'll get to the bottom of it. Don't you worry, Matthew. We'll get to it's all going to come out.
Yeah. But I think, as I'd always told my wife, I like the headship arrangement with being witnesses. It's like, Barbara, we're not, I mean, I'm not your boss. This is a partnership. We're married. I'm not going to tell you who you can and can't talk to, and what you can and can't eat, and where you will and won't be. We're just not going to do that. We're friends. We're married, and this is how it is. And I've always, you can
wear your yoga pants. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. That was. Well, those were some interesting talks from that individual. Yeah.
It's been a really interesting conversation, hearing your story, and I like to think that we'll have more conversations, because it would be really nice to pick your brains in future videos, and who knows, maybe we'll get to speak to more members of your family and hear their perspectives. But I think we'll wrap things up for now. I usually, as you may know, conclude these interviews with a question, the same question. And so I'll ask it to you as well. If there's anyone who's watching this, maybe someone who knows you or knew you as a Jehovah's Witness, they are confused as to why you stopped being a witness. Maybe they never knew you and they're just kind of on the fence as to whether they should continue as Jehovah's Witnesses or not. What would be your advice to such ones?
Well, first off, if you know me, I'm not lying to you when I tell you something. So At the same time, I don't want you to just take my word for it. But what I want you to do is invest the time in look over the fence. Nobody has the right to tell you what you can and can't read or who you can and can't be friends with. You will not find a spot in the Bible where Jesus disfellowshipped anybody. He talked with everybody, including Satan. So you owe it to yourself to be real with yourself and to be real with your family and your friends. So I guess in the end, what I would say is, once again, if you know me, trust enough in what I'm telling you to at least look at all the things that you have questions about child sexual abuse, about the blood transfusions and what's happening to the friends when they go to the hospital, and the ridiculousness of the belief when it comes to disfellowshipping. All those things, look at them for yourself and draw a conclusion. And if you're somebody that doesn't know me and you're looking at the witnesses as a religion, that's exactly what it is. It's just a religion. It has no power over you if you don't let it. And don't submit yourself to an organization that is going to tell you what you can and can't read and what you can and can't think about. That's the first decision that you would make that will save you the rest of your life. If you handicap yourself by submitting yourself to an organization like that, you will be that way the rest of your life. You'll handicap your way of thinking, and they will control you. So that's what I could say. Basically, in a nutshell, avoid it.
Beautifully put. And I couldn't help but think as you were talking, this is the difference between Jehovah's Witness propaganda and what I'm trying to do on this channel and other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to do on YouTube. You know, you have talks on JW Broadcasting where you have some guy in a suit staring into an auto cue, and just saying stuff that's been scripted for him, or he's written with a committee, or it just sounds completely detached. He sounds completely detached emotionally from what he's reading, and yet you've just been able to express yourself in an entirely genuine, heartfelt, compelling way without needing any script or any auto cue. And I think that says it all. That says it all, doesn't it, about where we're coming from. So, Matthew, it's been an absolute thrill to have you on this channel. Again, I hope to have you back. It would be fascinating to get your perspective on various developments as they come up. But I'll let you go for now. And thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Take care. Thanks, Lloyd.
Viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I certainly have. Don't forget that you can watch similar interviews by subscribing to the Lloyd Evans channel. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.